So my first question is, your father and Willard Hackerman bought the B&O warehouse in the early 80s. How did they become business partners?
My father and Will had been friends for a long time and had a lot of similar charitable interests and community interests. So they knew each other very, very well. And our families knew each other well. Um, and just a little bit of background. So um, my father had worked on Pier 5, and he had wanted to put a hotel on Pier 5 and had a pretty famous architect, Moses Zafti, worked on the design. And when the engineering came back, there were a number of issues with regard to structurally supporting a hotel going up on Pier 5. And, this was in like 1980, and it would have really been a big deal to, get that part of the harbor going. And there was sort of, my memory is about a $5 million delta that was needed to make the project really a go. And the powers that be in the city and the state decided that it wasn't something they wanted to kick in on the public infrastructure. So that didn't happen, and my father turned his attention to the B&O warehouse. He felt very strongly that it was an important boundary and entry point into Baltimore City, and that it could make a real difference as people entered the city and what they thought of the city. So he worked with the B&O Railroad for probably 3 years to try and buy the building and the land around it, and really was just laying fallow for a very, very long time. Was not, as railroads didn't pay property taxes, so it wasn't doing the city any good, both from a tax standpoint or the state, and or economics. It was just sitting there basically empty. And then he was able to finally strike a deal at the end of, pretty sure it was 1983, and he and Willard, put a partnership together.
The warehouse is the longest building on the East Coast. So, from my information, your father and Hackerman bought the warehouse for office space. Did they have other plans for the warehouse's use?
Yeah. So actually, I think if you stood the building up on one end, it would have been the tallest building in Baltimore by a long shot. Um, the building has its issues because, again, it's been a long time since I focused on it, but I'm pretty sure it's 53 feet wide and 8 stories high, plus very significant basement. And it had a great history. It was part of the Underground Railroad. Um, and it was a stop on the Underground Railroad. And in the bottom, in the basement, there were places for people coming up from the south to, bed down and hide. Um, but in any event, being only 53 feet wide, it posed a lot of issues from a practical standpoint. And what we came up with for plans was that the first 3 stories were going to be retail. We were going to put a glass box facing the harbor with escalators, and everything was going to be oriented towards the harbor. And then the top 5 floors were going to be offices.
What are some uh, what are some other memories you have of the warehouse before the Maryland Stadium Authority bought it? I remember your sister told me she held an art gallery there.
Well, there was a lot of there had been a lot of discussion about a new stadium, and Mayor Schaefer at the time, Donald Schaefer was mayor. We certainly, had discussions with him uh, regarding where he wanted the stadium and where the state wanted the stadium, because it wasn't worth getting involved with the building and digging in if they were just going to, buy it from us and use it for the stadium. And we actually had assurances from Mayor Schaefer back in '83 that that this was not where he wanted the stadium to go, and he actually, along with the state, backed us for uh, UDAG grants, which would have been very helpful in some of the public improvements that needed to be done. Um, and so we, Whiting and Turner, did a full cleaning of the outside of the building. The building hadn't been cleaned in a long time, and it made a huge improvement. Um, we did mock up uh, retail and office um, inside the building on different floors, and actually engaged leasing, and were involved with leasing both on a retail and office standpoint when when the mayor called and said, sorry, I do want it to go there, and we're not going to be able to support you for the UDAG grants. And that was sort of the end of what we wanted to do with the property. And the it took probably, I don't know, 4.5 or 5 years till uh, we actually got paid and got to an agreement with the stadium authority. I don't remember exactly when we signed over, the property. And um, what was the first season for Camden Yards? Was that '92?
Yeah, it opened on April 6th, 1992.
Yeah. So um, my guess is it was about 1989 when they actually took the property. And it was a tough situation for us because once it went to private hands, we had to pay property taxes and insurance, and we had no tenants for all those years while we were working through the issues with the stadium authority.
The Maryland Stadium Authority said that the warehouse was a mess before they renovated it. So I know that it was used for back in the day when Baltimore people traveled on horses. Like it was used for like a horse ground. There was like birds living in there. There was horse pee.
Well, go back a step. It was built in, I believe it was 1853 that it opened. You're really hitting my memory. I haven't thought about this stuff in a long time, but it was built for coal, and so it was with the major railroad right there, and that's why the building was so thin and long, was to get the rail cars, a lot of rail cars there, and they would both offload coal and load coal. And I don't know, I doubt that they're still there. They probably removed it. But there were 8 stories worth of metal swirling um, stuff that went all the way down that you would throw coal on, and it would slide all the way down and into rail cars. So that was, why it was built that way and where it was built. Um, then through the years when we took it over, it was very much neglected. And we, as I said, we cleaned the whole outside, and we did do mock-up offices and retail. But, we didn't start in earnest with cleaning the whole building because, it was obvious after a certain point that it was going to the stadium authority, and they would be doing what they would do with it. But there were some interesting times. The Barry Levinson used the building, one end of the building, for a lot of the set of the movie Tin Men. Barry Levinson, do you know who he is?
Uh,
So
he,
Barry So
sorry.
Barry Levinson's a pretty famous director from Baltimore, and his big movie was Diner, and
Yeah.
he was one of the Diner guys, and uh, so the Tin Men, uh, he used a lot of the one end of the building and the building a lot in that movie, so that was fun. Um, yeah, and anyway.
Um, yeah, also, sorry I cut you off there, sir.
That's all right.
What made your father and Hackerman decide to sell the warehouse to the Maryland Stadium Authority?
I don't think it was, they would have preferred to uh, kept keep the building and do the development that they were looking to do. But when the state of Maryland decides that they're going to, buy your property or condemn it, there's no choice. So, there wasn't. It wasn't like we were looking to sell, to the stadium authority and have the stadium there. We went to great pains to make sure that initially that the stadium wasn't going to go there, but once the state decided that that's where they wanted it, and Mayor Schaefer became governor, there was that was the end of it. That's where it was going.
Hmm. Um, obviously this was 3 decades ago, but does it still feel kind of like, oh, you guys were cheated in a way?
No, I don't feel that way at all. I think we're incredibly proud of the stadium and what the stadium authority created. They really and how important the building is to the stadium and the whole raison d'etre of Camden Yards. And I think that it did really ultimately achieve my father's initial dream of being an incredible boundary and entry, for people coming into Baltimore City and make a real, positive statement and help with development. So no, not at all. We don't feel that way at all. We're very proud of our part of the history there, and very proud of what the Stadium Authority did, and that it's been the home of the Orioles for so long, and it's really been, um, yeah, closer to 4 decades because we started in '83.
Yeah.
It has been 4 decades, and yeah, I was just finishing law school at Maryland, and lived right around the corner, at the corner of Hill and Hanover Street, through all of this. So, it was just, I could see it from my rooftop and, walk right over. And so, yeah, we were very proud of that. An interesting part of the history. Um, so my father, um, being a civil engineer and having a really good feel for the traffic side of this, um, the MARC train, when we bought the building, went all the way down to that main building, the train station. And so where it stops now is not where it stopped then. It went another block further into the city. And there was no way to get into the building from the harbor side because the rail line went all the way through, and there were no cuts. And so, in order to really make the development work, uh, my father negotiated with both the State Department of Transportation and the federal transportation department to pull back the MARC train and just before Conway Street, and then to have an entrance into Camden Yards from Conway Street. And so at the time, I can't tell you that it's still true, but as it's interesting because 395 is really an entrance and exit ramp onto 95. Are you familiar with it right there? Hello?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Did you hear
Okay.
my question? Did you hear my question?
Yeah, you said it was near 395?
When you come into the Camden Yards from I-95,
Or
you're
I-95?
right. You're getting off on 395, which is still an interstate highway, but it's really an entrance and exit into the city and into Camden Yards. And at the time, that didn't exist. And uh, my father made that happen. And at the time, it was the only private property in the United States that had a direct entrance on and off a interstate highway. And that really made the connection to the harbor and all of the entry into Camden Yards from the harbor side goes through Conway Street and into the building there, right in front of the warehouse. So that was a huge deal to be able to pull that off, to move the MARC train back a block, cut it off before it ran over Conway Street and cut off Conway Street, so that from the very beginning, when the stadium opened, you could go right in from the harbor side. So that was a big deal.
Stadium Authority originally planned to tear the warehouse down for parking space. I'm not sure if you know who she is, but architect named Janet Marie Smith was one of the big reasons why the warehouse is still intact today. So did your father and Hackerman know about that? And if so, were they okay with the idea of tearing the warehouse down?
I really can't speak to that. I was pretty involved. I don't have a memory of that. Um,
It might
and I
have been
don't,
like an early
I,
planning. Thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that the Stadium Authority was looking to us to get input on what to do. They had their own ideas, and as I said, they did a great job.
The Maryland Stadium Authority tried to buy the warehouse for $11 million, but your father and Hackerman wanted 18 million. Why did your father and Hackerman believe the building was worth $18 million?
Well, I can't tell you specifically because I was not involved with what the calculations were, but I think that the combination of what they paid, the improvements that they made, like I was just referring to, especially with the transportation stuff that they worked out, and what the potential of the building was that was being taken away from them. And remember, there was also 3.5 acres, I believe, with the property. So it wasn't just the building, right? And that's a lot of very valuable land. So in any event, that was the valuation that they thought was fair.
The Maryland Stadium Authority, your father and Hackerman went to court over the price of the warehouse, and the
Mhm.
judge, uh, sorry,
I just was nodding my head, yes.
and the judge, Joseph H. Kaplan, agreed with the Maryland Stadium Authority that the warehouse was worth $11 million. What was your father's reaction to losing the settlement?
Well, I don't have a direct memory. I know my father respected Judge Kaplan, respected Frank Birch. We all did. Um, and um, Was that the final price?
Yeah, $11 million.
So, back in those days, it was still, a lot of money. It was not what they thought it was worth, but, you know, moved on.
Yeah, it happens. Is there, you sort of touched up on this earlier, but is there any bad blood between your family and the Orioles over the settlement of the price in the warehouse?
Absolutely not. We have been huge fans of the Orioles. We have had, um, season tickets on the dugout since they came to Baltimore in 1954 from St. Louis. And we have always been very proud of the Orioles and the organization, friendly with different owners. And No, we have an excellent relationship. And as I said, we're very proud of what the Stadium Authority created at Camden Yards, and then with the football stadium and how important it is for the city of Baltimore, and what a great statement it makes as you enter Baltimore from the south, and the kind of development that it helped to spur on. So we have nothing but positive um, feelings and relations with all involved.
Yeah, if you think about it, your family actually helped with really keeping the Orioles happy because a big reason why Camden Yards was built was because the city of Baltimore was struggling because the Colts they left for Indianapolis in 1984. I heard someone called Robert Yusey a thief. Um, so that was, and a lot of people were worried, oh, were the Orioles going to pack up like the Colts were? But Camden Yards was built because of that, and you guys are still, the warehouse is still a really huge reason why Camden Yards is considered one of the best ballparks in the nation.
Well, thank you. And again, it's all part of why I've said a couple times that we're very proud of our role and what the Stadium Authority ultimately created. And you're absolutely right. I mean, if you go around the country, there are many stadiums that copied the design. Denver is a really good example of that, where the Rockies play, and the building and the brick, and yeah, it's a really nice feeling.
Yeah, I'm a Detroit Tigers fan, and my home stadium, Comerica, basically the structure of it from the where the stadium and the seats are is basically a copy of Camden.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first of its kind, and it really, and I give Donald Schaefer a lot of credit for he was very involved with um, the urban redevelopment of downtown Baltimore, and Barbara Mikulski got her start by saving that whole area in the Otterbein, and not letting that get locked down for a highway. And this was a really important part of the reimagining of Baltimore and of the harbor, and it has stood the test of time. So it's been terrific to be a part of it.
And this is my last question for you, but
Yep.
if you go when you go to Orioles games with your family or friends, do you ever stop by the warehouse? And if so, do you ever get like a non-scholastic feeling? Like, are you saying, "Hey, uh, hey, the B&O warehouse used to be in our family, and now it's here, admired by so many people."
I'm not sure of the question you're asking, but I'll answer it this way. We're big fans of the Orioles. We go right to the building to park, and walk under the building to go to our seats. And when we walk on Utah Street, and that's all land that we owned, it's a really terrific feeling. And we're just very proud of what's been created there. And when we see people enjoying so much, and feeling so much, the community feels so much ownership about the Orioles and Camden Yards. It's a really nice feeling. So I think that the right thing ended up being done with the building and the land there, and so it all worked out.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Mr. Macks.